Today I want to talk to you about the need for a sober mind. That's right, people. I think as INFJs, and I think actually for all introverted intuitives, this is a very important thing to do. This is imperative in some ways, is that we keep our mind as sober as possible. All right? And the reason being is because of the way our mind is, because of the way an introverted intuitive mind is. It's already very deep. It's vast. It's already looking deep into the labyrinth of a mind that it is. And a lot of times we have things that confuse us along the way, just naturally. As INFJs, especially, we are a very confusing type for the most part. We have depression, we have anxieties, we have things. In fact, we have all the reasons as to why people say we should be on a medication. You should be on some kind of antidepressant, things like that. You should be doing these things because of that mind. But the thing is, you're damaging your mind. You're taking yourself away from basically your greatest gift. Oh, this is Tom, and this is the INFJ experience. And so I'm going to talk about that today, people. All right, so first of all, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history into myself, people. I want to tell you a little bit about some of my past, okay? From about the time I was in my mid-teenage years till about the time I was going to say maybe in my late 20s into my very early 30s, I had a reckless life. Let's just say I had a troubled life to begin with. My teenage years, my early years were troubling. Go figure. But I had a lot of different things that were going on in my life, okay? I don't want to get into specifics, but let's just say I ran away from home a couple of times. In fact, I had run away across country, and I was gone for months at a time. And that was just part of it. But I came home, and I tried to rebuild my life. I tried to get a job at this point. But bottom line is, I did a lot of drugs. In fact, I was a regular pot smoker. Yeah, I did marijuana. I smoked marijuana. And I went through a spell where I was doing things like acid. You know, a lot of it was just that street mescaline. I don't know if you remember. Some of you people in this audience, I know a lot of you are about my age, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older. You're all right around my age. We grew up in that Gen X era, right in the 80s, the late 70s and 80s. And it seemed to be that doing drugs, smoking marijuana, smoking pot, doing things like that was just common. And it seemed like you lived in a city. It was just everybody was doing that. And you were square if you weren't doing that. There was something odd about you for not doing that kind of thing. So it was just prevalent for what it was. Now, yes, I got a little bit reckless. I got a little bit lost, and I was doing this regularly. And just by the virtue of maybe fate, maybe the fact that God was looking over me, I didn't do something stupid enough to have my life be ended in any way. So it was getting reckless. Through my mid-teenage years, I started working out. Then all of a sudden, I started getting the girlfriends. And I went through quite a few relationships, I'd say into my mid-20s, into my 30s as well. And I had quite a few relationships. Now, they didn't last long, but that's beside the point. But during the time, I was still doing a lot of like drugs and things like that and escaping into different things. Now, here's where my story I wanted to lead up to it, people. Around the time I'd say I was in my very early 30s, I noticed that my mind started changing. I started developing a certain way of a responsible mind. My mind wanted to change. I wanted to become responsible. I think I wanted to better myself. I didn't want to do this anymore. And not only that, I noticed that things were starting to change. My empathy, my intuition was starting to come to life. I noticed that I was able to read people differently, read them deeper. I was able to actually see into future outcomes by just piecing things together. I remember when my intuition was starting to develop, almost like it was just ripened at that point. Like I said, right around the time I was in my early 30s is when it came to life. But it was around this time too is that I realized that I wanted my mind as clear as I could. Now, the last time I smoked pot, literally, I remember smoking and regretting it. It was almost like I remember being high for the last time, thinking like how much I dreaded it. And I was being stoned thinking, oh my gosh, I just can't wait for this to wear off. Why did I do it? And the whole time I was just thinking why I did this. why it's just confusing me. I'm doing this to make me stupid. I'm doing this to confuse my mind. Why did I need this? And I couldn't wait for the buzz to wear off. It finally did. I never smoked again. And I'm going to say, like I said, that was in my early 30s at some point. But at this point there, I made a pact with myself. I told myself that my mind needs to be sober. My mind personally needs to be completely sober-free. I can't have any drugs, any kind of psych drugs, things like that. I can't alter my mind because I knew that things were developing, that this is part of my responsibility as bettering myself. And not only that, I did. I seen my intuition start to develop. I remember feeling people's emotions and knowing they weren't mine anymore. I remembered that change where were starting to come to life for me. So I made a pact that I would keep myself as sober as possible. Needless to say, my life went on, of course, and I still kept to that pact. I went on, I got married. I was married for 20 years. Long story short, about 3 years ago, I find out, about the MBTI. I find out about the Infj. Now, in other videos, I've told that story as well, how I found the MBTI. It was here on YouTube, by the way. But bottom line is, it kind of all made sense. My life at this point just kind of clicked into place. It was like, that makes sense now. I remembered there was a certain time in my life that I just described. I felt my mind starting to just come to life. And so it dawned on me why this was what it was. And then it all clicked into place. Now, that brings me to my point, is the fact that our mind, especially INFJs and all other introverted intuitives, our minds need this because of the way it works. An introverted intuitive mind obviously is very deep, and it's a labyrinth. It's a very deep maze. It is full of corridors and avenues and spirals. It's just abstract. That introverted intuition is very vast. It's abstract, and it can be confusing. And especially as INFJs, we have certain alignments in our mind. We have these functions in our mind. We have the intuition and the introversion that wants to remain pretty much alone. And then we have the FEO on this side that's always trying to make connections, that's trying to reach out. So we're kind of in a tug of war anyway. And a lot of times these things that go on in the mind confuse us. People, we all know this. We have been confused most of our life. Not just confused, but sad, lonely, depressed. Again, like I said, these are reasons to need to take these things. But we can't do this. These are avenues that we can't do. You might think you have the perfect reason to want to do this, but it's only weakening you. It's weakening. It is taking away your senses. My bottom line is, people, you're only hurting yourself. Now, being that INFJs go through most of their life having to deal with depression, deal with sadness, and yes, these are some of the things we've dealt with. By putting these substances in your body, ultimately only makes you dependent upon them, only makes you more confused, and it weakens you. It just basically weakens your senses, and it weakens your soul by doing this. By remaining strong is when you stay basically sober, is when you keep these things from making you addicted to them as well. All right? So basically that's one of my cases as to why. Now, also, a lot of times is through the life of the INFJ, as they get older, as they get into their 40s, 50s, and 60s, of course, all of a sudden things started aching. I had actually put a short out a couple of days ago about INFJs and chronic pain. I saw a video at some point about basically bringing attention to the fact that the INFJ is in chronic pain. And I would imagine as they get older in life especially is when that happens. Now, I think the reason is because INFJs understand that their chronic pain is something that they have to deal with because of the fact that painkillers, not just psych meds, obviously painkillers alter the mind as well. They do things to the neurons and the dopamine and the nerve endings in the mind to kill the pain, to make it feel like you're not in pain. So they're doing something, so they're altering your mind. I think ultimately INFJs, I think a lot of them think the way I am. I think we do. At least I'm guessing that we all think alike. That we're willing to suffer with the the pains, the chronic pains, even though they're minor. Maybe we suffer with the aches and the pains and the things in our life instead of taking these drugs in order to escape from them. And that's why we're in chronic pain versus other types that are, I mean, everybody's prone to this. Everybody's prone to having these aches and pains and chronic pains. But I think with the INFJ and intuitives, introverted intuitives especially, it's necessary because of the fact of why I'm spelling this out. It's only weakening our intuition. It's only weakening our gifts that we have. So ultimately, people though, so looking at that all in conclusion is the fact that bottom line is a sober mind, by keeping your mind clear and sharp, is ultimately it's freedom. Now, a lot of times your peace of mind is usually found through basically perseverance through our life, through just going through these trials and tribulations through our life. Eventually, we're learning, we're forging ourselves into who we are, into the people that we are. And INFJs, we are in a stage of development. Our minds are what develop. Our minds are, like I said, it's like I've used that analogy before. It's like that butterfly that emerges. We go through stages, like the caterpillar turns into the chrysalis turns into the butterfly. Now, the INFJ mind is a way of just finding that final salvation, that final freedom, is when your mind is when you finally reach that final stage. And you're not going to find that. You will never find that if you're weakening your mind by taking these drugs. You're never going to find that. You're going to actually put yourself at a deficit. You'll never find this. So as much as I hate to say that we have to suffer through the pain, we kind of almost do. Now, people, I'm going to just say that obviously there's certain times where if you want to have a couple of drinks on a weekend and just go and have a beer or two, I'm not saying it has to be completely that. I mean, if you're going to go out, it's okay to do that. It's just that we have to know our limits, and we have to know we don't excess in things like that, and we don't become addicted to these things. This is when it becomes dangerous to the INFJ, especially. This is when it just becomes dulling to our senses as an INFJ, and it ultimately just takes us away from our center when we dull our pains through these drugs, okay? And bottom line is, people, if you're ever out of a post-op, let's just say you have no choice but to take painkillers, you just had a post-operation, or something severe might have happened, severe trauma, yes, there's certain times in our life we need to take drugs. I mean, obviously, or painkillers for that matter. And under these extreme cases, yeah, there are times we have to do this. But always have the mindset that you're going to try to get off them, that you're not going to be on them permanently. If you can, people, if it is within your character, if it is within your capability. Now, I can't speak for everybody and all your situations, and if you do need this kind of help, then I guess this is the way you got to live your life. I can't speak for everybody, but from my own standpoint, this is where I stand, is that we need to have a sober mind, especially with our mindset the way it is. Okay? Okay. Well, thank you, people. I think I've covered enough of that. Okay? I think I've gotten a lot of that out. Well, people, ultimately, hopefully, if you're new to this channel, please subscribe to my channel and give me the thumbs up, and also leave your comments if you would. Let me know you like this kind of content. Let me know in your comments if you had a similar story of your own. And something tells me there's a possibility there's a percentage of you that kind of had similar things happen to you as well. Okay? Okay, well, thank you so much, people. And until the next time, have yourself a wonderful rest of your day.